employment expectations, part two, employer's perspective. So anyone in the hiring capacity, good Lord. And those looking for talent and what they're looking for when they're hiring some specific staff members. So one of the first questions, and anybody can kind of chime in, what core skills and attributes do you expect new surveyors to possess when they enter your organization? And I guess that's a twofold or fivefold question, right? It could be from a survey technician, it could be survey drafter. So maybe we'll just start with, we don't want to start with, because I think a lot of us are growing our own businesses with young staff and those with zero experience. So maybe let's look at somebody with, let's go 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 year experience. How's that? If they're changing jobs, they want to find and get some new skill sets under them, and they're not getting them at their existing company. So a 3 to 5 year college on. Let's go with survey technician. So we'll break this one into, I guess, the 4 different parts: survey tech, survey crew chief, and then we'll go drafting, and then we'll go PM. So somewhere in that range. So let's just start with let's go survey tech, kind of that 3 year to 5 year aspect. What kind of core values do we want to expect them to learn? And then I guess let's see how well. The next question after that was how well entry level employees meeting your expectations. Okay, I was thinking how we're going to set that bar for college graduates too. So helmets to hard hats, yeah. So you get that, Tim, because you're a union company. That most people can't use helmets to hard hats. So, but who wants to chime in on skills bridge? See, you got all those kind of things. Go for it, Kyle. Sorry, I keep rambling.
I'm just, before we get started, why do we not want to talk about people with zero experience?
Well, I think what are the core attributes you expect new surveyors to possess? So, as a new surveyor, they're not going to have any core experience, right? So, I mean,
I'm,
we
I
can
mean,
start that
I
conversation. We can start
I've
it.
been talking with a lot of people about it.
Let's go.
At
Let's
some
start
point,
there.
we're not going to
Let's start
have
there.
a lot of experienced people in the industry if we don't hire people with zero experience. How did
Yeah.
those people get into the industry, and what do you look for to get the people who are going to be a great worker potentially, maybe if you can pick the right person? How do you find that person? That's
Yeah, and I've told my story a bunch of times when I hire with zero experience. So we've had quite a few zero experiences, but um, a lot of our new zero experience employees come from the tire shop
Mhm.
because they have a really good work ethic and they're working hard and their attention to detail. I mean, that's a massive safety issue that you're putting somebody's lives at hand when they're putting tires on a car, right? So it's actually worked out really well for us. We had at one point I think we had 3 or 4 of them that actually come from a local tire shop. So that was our kind of our pool in the beginning, and then it's kind of turned from there. It's turned to friends of friends of friends. Uh, but that initial thing when we were very small as a small company, now we're 37 staff, but when we were looking for those young technicians, it was attention to detail, and it was that work ethic. And a tire shop is no better place than or Tim's passion coming from the veterans aspect of it, right? But
Yeah,
Jerry's got
but part of what you're bringing in there is a work ethic, not
correct.
just the knowledge base that the
It
person
was
has,
zero knowledge. Yeah.
but it's a work ethic,
Yep.
and so that becomes an important thing
Yeah.
that you're considering when you're hiring somebody, whether they're coming from a tire shop or from a school or from anywhere. But that's an important attribute. And that's one of the things I try to tell my students when they were going to be interviewing and stuff like that is when people ask me, use me as a reference, that's one of the things they ask about is what's your work ethic. They don't ask about grades right off the bat.
Yeah.
So that's part of what we in education would like to know more about from the industry side of things is what other thing besides, oh, they know the latest version of whatever the GPS software is, or this particular CAD package versus that particular CAD package. Because software is something you can learn. It's the capacity to learn that becomes the attribute. I mean, so when you're looking at zero experience, You know, what are some of those things besides work ethic?
Yeah, I mean, you're looking for a positive attitude, somebody that's open to learning, open to getting feedback, somebody who is attentive and paying attention to what's going on around them, so aware of what is going on. You don't necessarily expect them to be able to pick up on every detail because somebody with no experience is going to be overwhelmed pretty quickly, and that's to be expected. We're here to help them. But somebody who's going to be actively engaged in what's going on with them around them to the best of their ability. And then another thing that we always look at is, even somebody coming with zero experience is not completely with no experience. You're looking at personal attributes of, punctuality, ability to take on responsibilities. And a few critical questions when you're interviewing, you can kind of assess the candidate to see if they're ready for just even the minimum responsibilities of a workplace. And you also, one of the third thing that you maybe look for is sometimes whether they're going to fit the office culture. Uh, some offices are maybe more formal than others, and you're also looking at what role you're expecting them to fill in. Are they going to be predominantly field? Are they going to be predominantly office? Or are you at a company where you have a good mix of the two? So
You ready?
Got it. Sorry. You're good now, Connie.
yeah, so all three of those can be evaluated at somebody with no experience, just to see, are they going to be able to succeed? And I think what Jerry mentioned also is their ability to learn. Hopefully you can isolate a little bit of history in their life up to date to where, there's a good amount of complexity in surveying, and obviously everybody wants somebody who learns pretty fast, but it doesn't have to be fast learner. Average pace for surveying is okay as well, because there's always work to be done that sometimes a little less engaging and takes more repetition, and that can be actually good for somebody that's not a super fast learner. Where somebody who's progressing super fast, the office conditions may not change fast enough to give them the opportunities that are on pace with their growth. So there's a little bit of a challenge there back and forth. It doesn't always mean that the super fast learner is the best candidate.
Yeah, and Lori threw in the chat too. Honesty and willingness to ask questions, be curious, and ask for help. I mean, those are all traits of, what you want in a young, no experience surveyor. Tim typed in a lot. Tim, you want to chime in on that rather than me reading your chat?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's a little easier. To me, it's just soft
Yeah.
skills. So I can teach you how to survey. I can teach you how to do math as long as you have that basic. And that's pretty much what the JAC does for Local 12. You pass the basic skills test, a little bit of algebra, a little bit of geometry. Cool. We'll show you all of surveying.
Yeah.
But the candidates that really stick out to me are the ones that, yes, sir, no, sir, come up to you immediately, shake your hand, have the communication skills, are easy to work with, take ownership, show that motivation, because you can't fake that motivation to actually learn and want to do this as a career. And those dudes stick out of the 900 people that applied just this last year. They stick out. So it's very, very easy to see the ones who really have those soft skills that we can't teach them.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy how they're sticking out lately.
That's cool. How many of those 900, how many get into the program?
So usually it goes in halves. So 900 people, we were open for 48 hours, 900 people signed up. Of those 900 people, 450 actually showed up to the test.
Oh, wow.
And then of those 450, we had 225 pass.
Oh, okay.
So right now we got 225 qualified applicants that are currently looking for work for the 100 plus signatory employers from Central California down to the border.
Okay.
So now they just need to find work and get into the program.
Got it. Nice. Go for it, Jason.
I thought I'd chime in since I've worked for a few different companies in the last 4 or 5 years, and my experience from the employee side just validate the idea that I was looked at by many people I've been placed under a microscope, or I've been placed under just no guidance whatsoever. And then when things didn't go right or wrong, it was like, well, you should know this. And it's like, well, wait, um, why should I know this? Because you hired me? And that's where the disconnect is. And I think this group of people, this panel, is a representative sample that doesn't exist in most survey companies. And that's got to be, admittedly looked at, because not everybody can be here, obviously, but this is a unique situation because I've worked for 4 or 5 different places that I can think of, and a few of them could classify it in this kind of categorization. They could have these discussions. Otherwise, the majority, unfortunately, of this industry just have the meat grinder system. And that's what I'm trying to get licensed for, so I can help change that process. But for me, what you were saying, Tim, are the soft skills are definitely an important part of it. And that goes with like knowing how to be mature, how to like care and like, give a crap. Like today, I was walking one of the guys that I work with. He's got more years of experience of survey, but I'm sitting here with my LSIT and my PS behind me, and I'm trying to walk him through how to sign up for the test. He said, I'm just going to take it in December. And I said, well, hang on, you can't just take it in December. There may not be a slot for you because there's a lot of seats that these things get plugged up with. You may have to wait till next year. So don't wait till November to find out you can't take it in December. He goes, well, I don't think you understand. I'm like, you're right. I'm not going to offer anymore. I don't know what you're talking about. So I'm going to walk away, because he knows so much more than I do. I couldn't have the discussion with him. I said, I'll come back and talk with you about this later, because I think you're going to find out that if you wait too long, you might not get the test you're looking for. But that's a skill that's like telling me, because he's got more years of experience. It's like, I've already done this twice. I had to change my testing dates. I have empirical data, and that's valuable, but he's not willing to listen because I just don't have as much experience as he does. However, I'm just about to get my license. So once I have that, I'll be like, well, I guess I don't need the experience because I've got my license. It's unfortunate.
I think even to those points, Jason, I think we can even have that side, a whole nother conversation about the differences with remote employees, right? And having how that is going to affect that onboarding process where we can get into some of these. Yeah, because that's a whole nother world. Nolan, any thoughts on that particular, I guess, so are you, from your hiring standpoint, you don't, do you have many with 0 experience?
So I have hired 3 with 0 experience and potentially looking at a 4th. The first that I hired with no experience, he's still on with me now, and he's my first employee that I actually hired. He was actually went to college for mechanical engineering, and then he didn't finish mechanical, and then he got a degree in like criminal justice, but he always liked the AutoCAD, so he's kind of just floating around job to job. Didn't really have like an idea of what he wanted to do, but worked with my wife, so boom, you have a reference, friend reference again. Like almost all
Character
my
reference.
yeah,
Yeah.
all my entry level with 0 experience are someone or it's a friend of a friend.
Yep.
So not many people come to me with 0 experience. The people that come to me are the ones that actually have experience. So I do think there is a difference between hiring someone with 0 experience and a college student, though. Like there is a clear difference. Not that the college student has a better work drive, and sometimes the entry level person with 0 experience has a better work drive and a better attitude than the person with college experience. That college student may come in a little bit more cockier and may actually be like, oh, well, I know a thing or two, kind of like we were talking about earlier, but
Yeah.
2 different mindsets sometimes, and it just depends on what you get. It's a big sea and a big pool of people to choose from.
Right. Come on, Kyle, you started the conversation, add to it.
Well, I only brought it up because I've been talking with
Sure.
a few people about trying to get more people into the industry. I know guys who work in the field every day, they get people who come up to them and say, hey, I'd be really interested in doing this, and how do I get into it? And the answer is always, you gotta know the right people, or gotta have a reference somehow. And I worry about our industry if we only hire off of reference. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do through the California YSN website is help people find resources into other things, or into the surveying field from wherever they are today. I've been passing around people's resumes and giving them feedback from people in the industry, like there are some very smart surveyors who are in the hiring pool and they are willing to spend their time looking over these guys' resumes and say, hey, I would, think about looking at it this way and phrasing this the right way so you can get that first interview and prove that you will be a good employee after that. But so many people just don't even have that opportunity, and the YSN is kind of hoping to bring those people who want to be surveyors into our industry and help them with that networking process, right? That's what we should be doing, is being that character reference, saying, hey, this guy shows up to every meeting and he's super smart, you should hire him. So it's kind of one of the things that I've been talking about a little bit more lately, and I just worry that everyone wants an experienced employee who knows what they're doing. I just don't know if those people are always available to be hired.
Yeah, I mean they're definitely not. I mean, we could go back to the 06, 07 days when guys were jumping for 25 cents and 50 cents an hour, right? Like those were the peak days when things were hopping and guys were just jumping for a little bit of money. And so I think to that point, how do we, a lot of times, I guess from us hiring perspective people on here, anybody please chime in, but you get a resume in the door. Would you rather have a resume or would you rather have the phone call asking if you're hiring or not? And so that you can have that one-on-one conversation. A resume is so subjective to just what's on paper, but having a conversation with somebody is a whole nother level. So thoughts on that, paper or phone call?
Yes.
Yeah, I know exactly.
Uh,
Right. And I guess that kind of leads into it because I always say, are you hiring? And we'll go into those conversations, but please send me your resume when we're done hanging up on the phone, right? So I guess you end up with both, but
Yeah, I mean, my last 3 hires have all been people coming to me asking if I was hiring.
Yeah.
So, one of them, well, last one sent a resume. One of them didn't send his resume right away, just said he was looking and would be open to seeing what was available. And then the third, same thing. He actually sent his resume with. So out of the 2 of the 3 they sent resumes, but the third one ended up sending it afterwards just because, hey, are you hiring? I don't know if he felt like he was wasting his time or not if he sent his resume attached with it, but
Yeah.
or maybe he didn't have it ready. Who knows? Or updated. One of them was moving back. 2 of them are actually moving back, and one of them is a complete career change. So I kind of like that just to see what it is. I've also hired someone straight out of college who sent me their resume, and it's also like, holy crap, am I even going to consider talking to this kid with what I've just seen on paper? Like,
yeah. That's the other.
terrible English. Like, I don't know. English is hard for me too. I math, but it's just not well structured sentences. It's someone that's going to be going into the profession. It's like, he's gonna have to write a surveyor's report for me in Indiana soon. It's like,
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then you have the conversation. You have more than one-on-one. You learn about these people. Like, I am not. I don't English. I math. Like, I fully respect that kid, and I see where he's coming from. We can fine tune it as we go along, but I'm glad I had a conversation instead of just turning it away. So,
Nice. Yeah, that was great. Definitely both. A couple things in the cover letter goes a long way. Yeah, that's a good point, Kyle. Yeah, cover letter goes a long way.
I'd
Jerry,
rather have
oh,
somebody.
go for it, Connor. Yeah.
I'd
Oh,
rather have somebody walk into the door, honestly, and come talk to me. That's my favorite way to handle it. I guess where my office is, we're a little spoiled, and we have a technical college less than a couple miles away. But that's how I'd prefer to actually meet you in person right away, even before you send me a resume. I don't even need to see your resume if I talk to you.
I did something similar. Somebody walked into my door and he was going to the online program here in Nevada, and he walked in the door and I'm like, you already invested yourself into the profession. Like, the least I could do is give you the opportunity. And so, yeah, we kind of hired him on the spot as well because he was in the program, going through a bachelor's program, and he walked through the door. So he definitely had initiative. Jerry, you had muted there too, but
I was just going to say that we we kind of encourage students to approach employers early in the educational process. I mean, we only had a 2-year program at MATC, but we
Yeah.
wanted to get all of our students placed in that summer so that they'd be exposed to the profession as well as, reinforce some of the stuff we're doing in classes. And you don't always get summer job announcements and that type of thing. So we encourage our students, go out to the local surveying community, go to the chapter meetings, introduce yourself, and start talking with some of these people. I think that's part of the communication skills is being able to talk to people like that. On the other hand, a cover letter and a resume also says a lot about a student's ability to communicate and the poor state that we are in communication skills education that we have in this country. When you consider that person's already been through 12 years of education before they got into a technical college, and was spent 2 years in a technical college or 4 years in a degree program, and they still can't write a sentence to save their lives. There's something wrong along the way, and it's not unique to surveyors. I spent
Sure.
5 years, in an engineering program teaching a surveying class and working on a senior design project, and I had to read reports that these guys wrote every semester, a couple of members, and they can't write to save their lives either. Engineers can't. So that's that educational side of thing, the communications type of stuff. But that is something that can be refined, like Nolan was saying, because like any skill, the more you do it, the better you become at it. And part of what you want to do, I guess, with a new employee is, take advantage of their strengths, but you also want to identify their weaknesses and address those. And that's where mentorship comes in really, really important. And some of the feedback I've gotten from some of the people that are out there is there is no mentorship in a lot of these places. So that's something that I think more employers need to be considering. Now, if you only got a 1 or 2 man shop, that's really tough to do. But that's why I think initiatives like the Young Surveyors Network is putting together with the mentorship program is extremely important and extremely useful. And people need to know more about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. So circling back to the core skills would be soft skills or being able to attribute to work ethic situation. How important, and we've had this question, and it's been very interesting as the generations changes, but when you have a resume with somebody jumping jobs every 6 months or every year, red flag, or is that, especially when they're early on, not even in their professional career yet, but how much is a red flag of somebody who has 6 or 7 jobs and they're only 20 years old? Thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I deal with a
can
lot
be.
because I do pipeline so much.
Yes, yes.
So it's nonstop. I've worked for 37 companies in 3 years,
Yeah.
and I've gotten to the point I don't hire pipeline surveyors because I can teach pipeline to anybody, but it's a struggle to teach somebody that thinks they know everything how to survey.
Yeah, good point, Josh.
So I'd rather have folks that can do topo boundary and understand the fundamentals, and then pipeline's just a bizarre specialty.
Yeah.
But if all you can do is jump out of the truck and RTK something, you're not really super useful to me from a wanting to grow you standpoint.
Yeah, great point.
I think a lot of it really depends on context. There's a variety of reasons why somebody could have a number of entries on their resume, and there's also a variety of reasons why somebody doesn't have a number of entries on their resumes. Just because you're getting a resume with 3 entries, until you verify that, you don't know if somebody's being truthful, and those things have happened in the past. So I don't necessarily automatically discount people with a lot of entries. It just you want to look for an applicant that you want to invest yourself in, and this is why I like talking to people first.
Yeah.
Or talking to them with the resume, because talking is going to give me the impressions. Resume is then going to remind me what we've been talking about as I'm processing what the information that I received. The biggest thing for me is I'd love to see, and I think a lot of people are like this. I love to see somebody who is trying to step out of their comfort zone. I love to see maybe a touch of awkwardness, because that does tell me that they're stepping out of their comfort zone, and that tells me that they're willing to try something new, and that tends to endear them to you, because anybody that's trying and they're just a little short of skills, everybody wants to help them. And this is where you get a good candidate. So, everything that I see in a resume is going to be supplemented by that one-on-one interaction where you get the feel for the person before you can start making a decision.
Yeah.
Agreed. Totally agree on that.
I would also kind of add that, it depends on where they're at or where they've been. Because most of the time, if there's somebody local, you kind of know those companies, like, their experience, or maybe you've worked there yourself. You kind of have
No
what they,
management styles or something. Yeah.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I personally was someone with, I think I'm on 6 or 7, I forget what it is, but I own my own company now. And by the age of 32,
Yeah.
God, how old am I? All right.
You're
I
36.
swear I'm good at math, better than words, but it's like I worked at a job. I came out of school doing just construction staking, and I knew I wanted to get more boundary, more of that you learned in school. So me leaving to get more boundary experience, sure, make it a red flag, and then I left the field to get inside to get more CAD experience. I once left a job and took a pay cut. It's
Yeah.
why did you leave? Why were you here? What did you do here? So I think the conversation is more important than just picking up a piece of paper and saying they've been 6 places, and what did you do with those 6 places? But then, like you said, it comes back to the honesty of where they're really at. But that's part of having the conversation over the phone in person.
Yeah. Yeah, that's some good stuff. There's some good stuff in the chat. I know people online later can't read it, but Jerry, before I go to you, Jason, really quick, before Jerry threw in there, the grammar is the difference between knowing your shit and knowing you are shit. So there's some good stuff there. Jason, go for it.
Yeah, I was in the last enrolled program at Metro State in Denver back in 2008. And Stoughton, the professor that was teaching it, lambasted me in front of the class for having the worst chicken shit scratch handwriting that anyone he's ever seen come through the program. Yet I was able to survive that audacity and fun that he provided, but I understood that meant I needed to get my stuff in gear and get good at writing. I had in 1 year, I want to say 5 jobs, because I conclusively came to the conclusion as I came to a point and there was no path to license. I left with no questions and no guilt, because at the point where you're on the licensing path, and I'm an older person who came into this much later in the game than most people, which meant I'm not waiting around. I left one company because they said, well, maybe in 10 years. I said, see you later, bye. And I said, I've got a college degree behind me. I've got half the classes I need to get there. So I think the discussion is terribly important. But for one reason or another, if I've got 4 or 5 jobs, if there's a reason for it, that's a good conclusive conversation to have. I want to get licensed, and these places didn't offer me anything to get to license, so I moved on. But then I also have places where I've stayed for a few years here and there, and that's because they gave me the education that I needed to get, because I knew I didn't know it and still don't know it. But that also takes a person that has concrete direction that they want. But most of the people that come in with no experience aren't exposed to the path to license almost exclusively. And I can say that because I've seen people that work with me. I try to teach someone everything I possibly can about what I know. So my job is to teach you anything you want to learn, because as you get better at that, that means I can free myself up to do other stuff that I can't do right now. And that's the hard part to get to, because I think as an industry, we still have that weight that we're trying to push forward called the budget. And that's the part that I'm trying to imbue whenever someone new comes into our group. I always tell them, I'm here to train you with as much knowledge as I can, because my job is to make you as smart as me. If I can't do that, then I'm not doing my job.
Yeah, good one. My dog's barking in the background. Lori threw some good stuff in there, coming from later a second career or third career, even, right, in the chat. So even as a second career, still needing young surveyor and still needing mentorship. So living in a rural area and one surveyor in the whole area, so hitting the books and hitting YouTube is your version of mentorship. Yeah, That's exactly it. So
Well, the distinction we want to make is when we're talking about what we desire in new surveyors entering the profession, we don't necessarily mean somebody that's a young surveyor coming straight out of high school or college, but that's somebody that's new to the profession, whatever
Exactly.
path that they followed to get there.
yep. I think we hit that one pretty well. So another one, question on here: what are some of the most common gaps you see in knowledge or competency among recent graduates or young hires? So as the recent graduates, I have not hired any recent graduates. I'm hiring either no experience or I've hired recently a few with experience. So I don't have any of those college students. So anybody, go for it, Connie.
So I haven't had a college student super recently, but over the years I have. And one of the things that is a big change for college students is when you're in school, you're going for the grades, especially if you're a better student, you're used to getting good grades, and you start feeling pretty good and pretty knowledgeable. And on the other hand, school only teaches you the idealistic side of things, how things should be, so you're striving for certain things. Then you find yourself in the workplace, and it's a different environment with different goals from college, and that's a significant adjustment for a lot of college students, where the idealism ends up having to be retrained a little bit to having to pay attention to the scope and to the budget and what the client wants to do. And just because we're not doing things the way your professors say things should be done ideally, it doesn't mean that somebody's doing a poor job. So they're I know we tell students all the time, this is just the beginning of your learning, but that really kind of doesn't sink in until probably a year or two when they're in on the job. So that's one of the challenges that I see a lot of students facing.
Good point. Nolan, you said you recently hired college graduate. Yeah. Yeah. 2 college graduates.
Okay. So Jerry, plug your ears. You're not allowed to listen to this. I'm a college grad, so I'm not bashing anybody, and I'm a 4-year grad, so I'm not bashing anybody. It's just from my own experience of going through college and then seeing 2 other people come out. Just like a resume, when you look at someone that's career hopping, you almost have to look at where they've been now or where they studied. And you should be like, why does that matter? But honestly, I've hired one kid with an associate's degree who's still going to finish the last 2 years online through the bachelor online version. Sitting down with him today, and I know he's taken construction/route surveying as one of his classes in his first 2 years, and I had an alignment built into a drawing, and he's like, what's that over to the side? And station and offsets. And I'm like, you've had route surveying, right? He goes, oh, I don't know. And I know it's in his first 2 years, and I know he's taken it. It's just like, so we talked about a route survey, we talked about alignment, we talked about station and offset for like 30 minutes this morning. And I'm not going to judge him, I'm not going to say he didn't remember it. People got things going on, but on the reverse hand, I have a student that's only taken or a graduate that only took 21 hours of surveying because the program went away, but luckily his professor is someone I graduated with that's coming back and trying to restart the program, doesn't have all the classes available. He busted his butt this past February and March and took the FS and passed it with 21 credit hours. So, I think the degree does matter, but I also think the program matters and who's teaching it. We don't have many professors anymore, our programs are going away. I know, Jerry, I'm almost done. I didn't say you're a bad professor, by the way. I'm just saying, I didn't say schools are bad, but it's just, much like the jobs or their experience, I do think the college matters nowadays, so.
Yeah, I don't disagree with what you're saying. As a matter of fact, part of the problem we have is the difficulty we have in filling surveying instructor positions.
Yeah.
We have right now one of our primary programs in the state that has no faculty member in it, and they're trying desperately to hire a faculty member to fill the position by this fall. And they're actually lowering the bar on the requirements in order to get somebody in the door. And we've seen that happen at a couple of institutions. And I've looked at curricula that have been modernized, and I look at them and I wonder how in the hell are they going to get a thinking surveyor coming out of some of these programs? Because it's gotten to the point where some of these have become more push button approaches to things. We can bring GPS into a very introductory surveying class and have them start doing GPS surveying without knowing anything about coordinate systems or datums or anything like that, because you push the button, you get a solution that's really easy to teach. And that happened with a lot of engineering programs when they started decreasing or eliminating surveying from the program, because what's surveying? I mean, hell, anybody can teach surveying, that type of thing. So we wound up with a lot of substandard faculty members at all different institutions. So yeah, I think the degree program and the caliber of the people that are in that degree program and their dedication to the educational aspect of that degree make a big difference. We have, when I taught here at Platteville a number of years ago, we still had a mining instructor that was teaching mine estimating, that they were taking into account the cost of straw for mules. You know, at some point after 60 years, 50 years teaching at a program, you got to get them out of there and replace them with somebody else that knows what's going on. That's part of the reasons I retired from active teaching, is because I couldn't keep up with the technology anymore. It just got to the point where you had to have younger people in there that were more up on this stuff to incorporate it into the educational model, but not to replace everything in the educational model with push buttons. So I agree with you wholeheartedly, Nolan. I think the quality of the program, unfortunately, doesn't stay constant, but I think that there are dedicated people out there that are working really, really hard with limited resources that they have.
Oh yeah, I mean, like one of the programs, the professor has about 40 students that they have to like basically try to get through the door, because we're at a shortage and we're short professors, just like you said too, or qualified people doing the job. So, you know, I'm not against unions, and I 100% support them. Like I'd like to hear Tim's version on, you know, yes, there is you go to work, but you also get trained. Like there is a training aspect to that. So, I mean, those people are getting real life experiences and then taking what they get in real life and taking it back into the classroom and vice versa. So.
Yeah, so we kind of have a cool little setup. So we basically get the kids for, it's about 4 years for their apprenticeship program till they're a journeyman chainman, and then a 3-year follow-on course. And we deal with the same exact problems that I feel like higher education deals with. It's outdated curriculum. This is how we've always done it. And there's a lot of stuff in there that's still really, really good. You need to know about the coefficient of steel so you can sit there, look at the notes, and figure out that, okay, cool, it was 120 degrees, they were pulling at this weight, and we still have to know that stuff. But for me, I also got to make you productive to your employers. So we play around with the old school stuff. We need to know about sunshots. We need to know about this. We need to know about that. But then when it comes to my field classes, I just get to mess with kids and I want to put them in the most awkward situation possible. I go stand in front of the truck. I'm a big excavator. You got to now pick up your gun, do a gun drill, move it over here. Let's get you frustrated and get you flustered in this hot heat. And all my classes are in Ontario, California. It's like 110 and just there. So it's definitely a cool thing. And then you also have students that you teach them stuff. You teach them about angles, distances, and how to do it here. Then they go to work Monday through Friday and they go back, oh, hey, dude, I actually did use that. Hey, you yelling at me to get my calculator programmed. Dude, I busted that out in front of my chief. We busted out some calcs real quick. It's cool to reinforce that. And no matter what, they're always able to bounce it off the chiefs as well. So it's definitely a good gig that they have going on right now.
That almost goes back to kind of, you know, like the SEAL training, right? You put them in those awkward situations, and that's what, you know, I think that's probably the number one trait of a party chief or survey crew chief or whatever, you know, whatever title we're giving them, is that problem solving ability. And I think that's also going back to the very first one, is core attributes would be critical thinking skills, right? And being able to get yourself through some of that, some of those soft skills, but the problem solving aspect of it, and you putting them in those awkward situations, is probably, I think that's cool. Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best
Yeah.
attributes you could put in a classroom.
Yeah, and it kind of still sucks because a lot of these kids still are, and I call them kids. We got students ranging from 19 to like 55.
Yeah.
But some of these kids still get to deal with the whole your side of the truck thing and the whole no, you're a chain, you're going to be on that. That doesn't make sense to me. The more my kids understand how to be a party chief,
Yep.
the more they understand. Hey, on Saturday when I was chiefing, I was thinking about this. Okay, cool. Let me think about that. He's probably thinking about that. Let me get this handled. Let me sit there and try to alleviate some of this pressure for him. So that's really where I'm trying to go for this. Make them as awkward as they can possibly be in the safest environment possible. Because when they screw it up by 20 feet and fill 30 feet to the sewer cut or to the sewers, we're safe here. It's not going to cost your company millions of dollars.
We had something very similar to that, and I've talked about it probably a few times, but the incorrect, it was a cut of, so the elevation on the lath was, we'll say 1833, and the cut was 1633, right? So it was something very similar, but they wrote the cut as the 1833 and the elevation of the nail as 1633, and vice versa. And the worst situation you can think of, it was a lateral bore of a sewer line going underneath a railroad, and it it messed up the sewer flow and those kind of things, and so it ended up having to drop the manhole on the other side. Like it ended up being a fairly substantial back charge. But those type of things, right, putting them in those situations, and understanding what they're writing on the lath and the differences between nails and those kind of things, like it can be costly mistakes for sure. So and then going back to that, the other point I was going to make is I would say you as union teaching union staff, on the flip side, CSTs or people taking the FS at the PS don't need to necessarily understand coefficiencies of steel taping anymore. But as a union guy laying out high rises, it's one of the most important things, right? So it's like understanding kind of what you're teaching and what you're laying out aspect of it. So I think
my thought process behind it too is we're going to have to retrace everybody else's steps.
Yeah.
So you still need to know something about it. I need to know enough to investigate it at least.
Yep.
So I don't know. I think we got to cover still all the old school stuff, but still we got to keep up with the new stuff.
Do any of the people that hire here have a probationary period and a policy with respect to that that they make their new hires or candidates for hire aware of? Reason I ask is because being in education, every job I've interviewed for, I've had to prove that I could do what I say I could do. I've had to go in and I've had to actually teach courses in front of students and in front of other faculty and that type of thing. And when you're working in a surveying firm or whatever, you don't really say, well, okay, as part of your interview process, we're going to have you go out there and do a stakeout job type of thing for us. But you're basically using that first probationary period as a way to kind of see if they know those skills, right?
We have an onboarding process that can each person has kind of an expected level of utilization, and that starts with first couple of weeks you're expected almost zero utilization as we get you through all the corporate stuff, and then your utilization requirements increase throughout next 3 months and up to 6 months, so that you get a combination of seeing what your capabilities are versus also within our company, we try to standardize a lot of things. So then we expect and give people a little bit of grace so that we can teach them what our standards are until all of that melds. I usually tell my own employees, I have a staff of about 4 to 5 people, look, I'm not gonna judge you. I'm looking at you as a trainee probably for the first year. No matter what level you're at, even if you're a project manager, it's going to take you some time to get used to things. But at the same time, we'll be looking at, are their skills up to par for the position? Did they oversell themselves, undersell themselves? And we talk about these things frequently. Our HR does have a 90-day clause, but well, in California, the employment is at will, so we can, provided that we document things properly, you know, we can lay somebody off at any point in time if the fit isn't quite right. So there's a lot of communication happening back and forth to make sure that we have the right person and that they have the knowledge that to place them in a right role.
Yeah.
We have,
Go for
we're thrilled when we get more than one person to interview for our position. So
it.
we are not in a place where we would necessarily be putting in a probation window where, I mean, we're better. It's better today than it used to be, but we used to have jokes about, you know, can they fog up a mirror? So we do a good job, you know, we do as good of a job as we can with hiring, but we're rarely picking from more than one person who's coming in for an interview.
Yeah. Stuff. Jason, go for it.
I've been in and out of public and private. So for public, it's almost guaranteed it's at least a year. Sometimes it's 2 if it's like the federal jobs you find. And for one company that I worked for, I had to take like a 3.5 hour psychological evaluation, and it was in depth. And the best part about it was after I started working there, because that was one of the key components of bringing someone on for a leadership type role for the track that I was being groomed for. They came back and says, yeah, the psychologist that gave you the test when I asked you some questions and talk about your test. And it was pretty funny because they wanted to know why I answered some of the questions the way I answered them. And meanwhile, I'm like waiting for some equipment at one of the vendors that were getting some things repaired and picked up from. So I had some time to kill. So I was like, sure, I'll answer your questions. And they saw that I had a pattern that I had been using for certain questions. They go, well, yeah, it's because you're trying to ask the same question with different words. And they go, you actually saw that? I go, yeah, I saw that. So I answered it the same exact way because it didn't sway my answer. But they said one thing that stood out was like, you might be a good leader, but you don't seem to be wanting to be in charge. And I said, at this position for where I'm at, I have a lot to learn. What Connie was saying is like, yeah, it's a year-long process just to get up to speed for most of that stuff when you get into a leadership role. And I said, I'm nowhere near that, so I'm ready to learn. But yeah, I don't need to be in charge because if I'm working with professionals, we're all going to get together. But I can step up and take that position. If someone needs to lead just because we need one person to be in charge, I can do it. But I don't have ambition to be that person because I want to be in charge. I'll just do it because they need me to be in charge. And they were kind of like, yeah, we kind of saw that in your test. So I just kind of let that sit in the back of my mind and let me go, yeah, it's okay. I don't have to be in charge. But they have various ways to see if you're right for the role. And in the end, I left because the structure of the place that was at, 3 people had left with licenses, which is why I'd gone there in the first place. And that meant that the culture was bad. So I decided to go, cool, pop and smoke and jumping out of the back of this big boy, getting out of this plane because I'm not going down with this one. So yeah, you have to be cognizant of that stuff. But as the employer, you actually have to do your due diligence. You have to test them, see if they can answer the questions. I mean, I've taken several practicals for job interviews where they want me to run slopes on adjoining and distant manholes and inverts just to see if I can do it. And I can do it. And I showed them that. And they're like, wow, you're like one of the first people that could actually do this work. I'm like, that's sad because if people are applying for this job, this is a pretty simple process. It's not 3rd grade math, but it's also not rocket science.
Good stuff. I think that kind of leads into the next question that was on there is how do you set expectations around career growth, promotions, and skill development? Thought one along those lines? Like you're allowing a new hire to come in and giving them a year. Those kind of things, like what other kind of attributes kind of go into that skill development? Who's got some stuff on that one? And no one, you got no career growth opportunities.
I don't, but I mean, I agree with the kind of probationary period talk. Like, if it's somebody new or entry, we're really thinking like 90 days to see if you can have that character. That's like are you going to show up to work on time? Are you going to be there? That's the more important thing in the 90 days. And then, maybe halfway through the year, are you picking up skills? Are you taking initiative to set up the robot without asking, are you getting everything out that you need? Are you filling up the truck? You know, those are starting to be things that are what your role is as someone that's learning or picking up as you go. And then it's, are you ready to start shooting line work? Are you ready to start, you know, venturing out and making decisions on your own? So there has to be growth. And then even with like myself right now, I have a new hire and he's actually from outside the US, but I know he has a construction background. He hasn't been working construction with us yet until our big project starts here in July, but you know, I've been patient with him because I know he's learning more probably the US culture than anything. And it's once we get to that construction job site though, it's gonna be, can you really do what you say you're gonna do? So there's always room for growth, but there's also coming back to the can you really do what you're supposed to do talk.
Yeah. I will say ours, you know, expectations around career growth, especially we hire a lot with zero experience, so ours providing them the CSTs, providing them the drones, providing, you know, upskilling themselves and giving them that opportunity to upskill themselves on our time is a lot of our expectation of growth. And so we, you know, 2023 we didn't have the greatest year, and so we laid off a couple early in the 24, and it made it a little easier choice of laying off somebody who was just there for a paycheck rather than going through the certifications and, you know, those kind of things. Unfortunately, you hate to have to do that stuff, but when we provide a platform for them to upskill themselves really well and don't do it and just show up, you know, for a paycheck, those are the kind of things. So the promotions thing, I'm big on like strategic planning as well, and kind of allowing guys to grow themselves. And you know, as we get our, I just did a whole presentation for our staff last Friday, and our average age of our staff is only 44 years old. We actually only have three boomers, and then we only have 3 boomers and 3 Gen Zs. There's 11 Gen X's and 19 millennials, and so when you look at ours, we only thankfully we only have a few leaving within the next, you know, 3 to 5 year window. And so but getting them to be able to replace those, you know, 150 years worth of experience that's about ready to walk out the door, like that's a lot. So providing those skills to be able to get them to develop. So that's kind of our approach when it comes to that. But did we lose Connor? Oh, I see Connor dropped off there. We lost Connor. Who else? Anybody else? Josh, what about, I guess, just, yeah, right? Hey, what about your hiring? I guess you or Tim kind of, Tim's got an easier one because he can just go right through the apprentice program. Like they've got to upskill themselves if they want to stay in.
I'll do a probationary period, kind of dependent, just to see how they are. And generally, if they come in wanting $30 an hour, I'll tell them I'll do 28, and in 90 days, if you are what you say you are, I'll give you 32.
Yeah.
And then I also, as I learn my crews and my folks, I do set yearly goals to do their CST, get their drone license, learn CAD. I'll alternate. Generally, after about 6 months, after they've started doing their own work, I'll have them go in the office and work with the mapper to actually process and map their project so they can learn that everything they thought they did right maybe wasn't the rightest thing to do. And kind of learn that there's more to it than just going out and doing the field work. You need to do it in a way that the office is able to generate something worthwhile. And I try to push that with folks to, if they don't meet their goals, the next year we meet, I'll maybe lessen it a little bit. But right now, most of my crew chiefs have their CST. They can calc their own points. They can do a very rudimentary drawing, process their data. They have their drone license. And one of them I just sent to GPR training this week because he decided he wanted to pick up Sue in GPR. And I'm like, great. I go, you're making yourself more valuable to leave me, which is what I want. I want you to grow.
Exactly.
But you're also making yourself more valuable where you're not going to be the first one I pick to cut.
Yep.
And I think I lucked out not, it's going to sound bad when I say it, but most of my recruitment, the last 5 or 6 crew chiefs I've trained over the last 10 years have all been my daughter's boyfriends. But she decided to get married, so I've lost a lot of
You lost your pool.
my pool of people. But her husband's actually probably one of my better crew chiefs, and I hired him straight
That's
out
awesome.
of high school.
That's awesome.
And I alternate them with myself in the field or one of my other senior crew chiefs, and we have the same work ethic, can do a lot, but he has people skills and I lack them greatly. So they kind of get the best of both worlds of learning how to deal with kind of, I'll say, senior moment people like me. After 30 years, I still spend every day in the field because I just enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I don't have a filter, so offices are dangerous.
Love it. That's awesome. Tim, how about, I guess from your side, just let's bring in the union perspective aspect of it, the apprentice aspect of it.
So basically, from my side is I tell my kids once they graduate this program, congratulations, you're just like everybody else with a high school diploma. Union education is the absolute bare minimum. Our profession is growing so much that you don't have, this is not the profession to be lazy in. The last thing you did was you did something really cool back in college in 1984. We got to step it up. So I'm pushing all these kids to get their drone license. And really, I'm just trying to tell them too that if you want stuff to stay surveying, you better be able to provide that service. We're not going to be able to sit there and say that mapping and aerial photogrammetry is surveying if none of our surveyors are going out and getting their drone license.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So you better go get drone licenses. You better go get your NOCA certification. You better go get your LSIT. You better go get your PLS. This stuff, it can't be optional anymore. And if you want to remain, you need to prep for that 08-09 recession now. Because that's one thing, even in I was lucky. I was in the Marine Corps when the 08-09 recession happened. War was good at that time, so went that way. And I have yet to deal with a recession. I've had awkward hiccups and awkward slowdowns, but I'm also just a hungry person to where I'm still diversifying and I'm still pushing in other aspects. And that's what I'm trying to get these kids to understand is that congratulations, you finished the union program. What next?
Yep.
This isn't the end.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, we've had those same conversations by just them upskilling themselves provides the company to have additional resources that they can go out and do, right? Like still not practicing outside the expertise from a ethical standpoint, but being able to learn new things and taking the chance to do that and learn those new skills helps the bottom line of a company in that instance. So we
I push them to join the survey societies, attend meetings, get engaged with the chapters, and push them, kind of like Tim said, make them uncomfortable in a controlled environment, because you're going to see a lot more about that person and what they're capable of than everything's unicorn farts and dust.
Yeah. Yep. That's awesome. Valerie threw in there 18-month probation for new hires and 0 survey background. And I know Valerie's works for the city, so going back to the probationary period. So go for it, Jason.
I was going to say, when I was in Las Cruces, we were required to be CST2 office and field, both of them, because the surveyor that was working there at the time required it because he wanted people that were serious enough to take the test. And you had a year to take it. And it's an open book test, but it's still a lot of stuff. You have to at least know what you're doing because you can't just search for a answer and find it by knowing that it's on page 37. I mean, it's a 6.5-hour test. And it was a great prep for the FS too. However, it also depends on, who your employer is. I mean, we had that 1-year probationary period, but I've been in places where you're always on probation, no matter where you go. I mean, you're always going to be looked at. And that's the thing, whether it's stated in the front of the job or not. So if you're serious about what you're going to do, you're going to meet those expectations. I think the hard part is that finding employers that have time and the bandwidth to do that, because like I'll use someone else's words, Landon Blake says you have to let them fail just the right way.
Yeah.
Because if they don't, they're not going to ever know what they're doing wrong, because you're always stepping in to make sure that they don't fail at all, and that's not realistic. And if you let them fail just the right way, they learn immensely. I mean, my best experience was a few years ago. I was doing a construction staking for a giant pour that was going to happen at 5 o'clock the next morning. And somewhere across the platform, I did 2 or 3 setups, and all of a sudden, concrete guys saying, "Hey, boss, this doesn't work. We're off by like 8 inches." And I knew that there was 2 sets of plans and 2 sets of architecturals, 2 sets of civils, because I was on the project all the time. I said, "Well, which project are we working on? The first one or the second one?" We all sat down, and the concrete guy that was in charge is so smart, and I always owe him a beer or dinner every time I see him. Said, "I think you had a bad setup." I go, "I think you're right." And went back and I shot the entire site from control to control and walked the whole thing. And no one taught me how to do that, but I just did it because I knew that, like Tim was saying, that's millions of dollars if that had been poured incorrectly. And it was like I had to stop and think, do I have time to get it done? Because they're tying rebar, and this is like 1 inch and 1.5 inch rebar. It's big pieces of rebar. They're not moving it. So I had to make sure that I got done. I finished about 11 o'clock that night and came back the next morning at 5. And the superintendent was like, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I'm just making sure we're on schedule for Friday for the next pour."
That's awesome. um, we either had a lot of West Coast people and they all got off at 5:02 because we're down to like 12 people now. This we went from 21 to 12. This is funny. But let's maybe do a couple more questions since we're losing some people. But we even lost like 2 of our panelists, Connor and Kyle. They dropped off already. We're doing something wrong apparently. Let's go with another one would be we either do onboarding or we do cultural fit. And I wonder how we kind of flip those two. But what's the company's approach to onboarding and mentoring young surveyors, and how has it evolved over time? That's a good one too.
I like cultural fit.
Yeah. Okay. Let's start with that one then, because it does kind of roll into the next one about onboarding and mentoring. So, cultural fit. Let's start with that one. Yeah.
I think for us, I mean, being a smaller company, a bigger company might not say it as much, but
Yeah.
I mean, there's still culture to bigger companies. But
Mhm.
for us being smaller, like if you don't mesh well with who you're working with, like we're gonna have conflicts, and not conflicts in general, but just in the field, how you work together, what you do from, your 8 to 5, 7 to 4, or whatever you were working hours. Like the first crew chief I worked with, as Tim was saying, it wasn't, this is my side of the truck, your side of the truck. It's, I'm going to see you for 12 hours a day. I'm going to see you more than my wife. Like,
Yep.
It's kind of important who you're working with and who you're trusting. We did a lot of heavy highway work. I mean, some of it, we're not playing in live traffic per se, but, around equipment, or if you're on a construction site, like, you can have trust in that person. You got to know at the end of the day, you're going to do the best to operate to go home. But, I mean, even like company parties, stuff like that, you want to be around people that enjoy coming to the office. I mean, not every day is going to be a good day, but you want to try to make it the best day possible, because we spend more time collecting paychecks half the time during the week than we do celebrating them. So,
Yep.
nobody goes to work because they necessarily want to. They go to work because, they have to collect a paycheck, but why not make it a little bit enjoyable? So,
Yeah, that's good points. Yeah, we're big on cultural fit, of course, as well. So attitude and that kind of stuff about hiring the younger guys. So seeing how they gel together. I guess going back, 2 things on that particular one. Going back to the probationary thing, does anybody have benefit probationary periods as well, or is it just kind of work? What would be the work? Understanding the work job or their scope, probationary periods. I guess that coming out that way, but does everybody's benefits kind of start or staggered probationary period type stuff too? Where our benefits start on the first of the month they're hired, and then they just would be under kind of a 30 or 60-day probationary period for work type things. But going back to that cultural fit, but
For benefits, we're the same way, first of the month.
Yep.
And then probationary, taking a truck home, things like that. Generally after the probationary period, they're going to be I'm more comfortable letting them take the truck home, because I've had at least hopefully 70 days out of the 90, they didn't show up drunk.
I love it. Amy threw a big one in the chat too. Remiss about it. Industry professionals not mention that the industry needs to have more diverse employees for sure. So we think carefully about how we judge candidates who we may be native English speakers or who have family obligations at home raising kids. Yeah, and that's where a lot of that remote working comes into play, especially. We work hard to make sure that we're looking for actual skills and job duties and whether or not they communicate these as well. So we aren't just hiring people who have the same backgrounds as our current staff. Ah, that's a great point. Yeah, I love that, Amy. Thank you. That's good stuff. That's a good kind of cultural fit type conversation on that particular one. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's really easy to get yourself into thinking about, you know, culture as
Yeah.
things that are about the people rather than about the job and the skills. And there's, you know, we know we all have different biases that we come into a situation. So like being thoughtful about even the language we use, right? I find myself saying guys,
Sure.
and we have some of our best staff are women. I bet Lori would say that too.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we talk about people in an exclusionary way, and
Yeah.
just the simple ways of talking make a difference in how we think.
Yeah. Yeah, good stuff. How do so going back to the cultural aspect of it, how do you engage remote employees and some bigger firms like that? Like what do we have? We have staff at 37 and 6 of ours are remote. But any activities we do, family activities during the summer, we'll pay for the travel to come into town, those kind of things to keep them, keep that team atmosphere continuing even throughout the summer, those kind of things. And so I'm wondering how other companies handle that, especially, I guess, DEA. How do you guys handle remote employees and coming to headquarters type of stuff?
We were just talking about this week. In the Portland office, we've got several remote folks. We don't always bring people in for social events, but when we do have events, we try to make, that's the time when people are all in town that we do other fun things, but we kind of do it the other way around. I think our